the main criticisms out there were in regards to the seating. How would you change the seating going forward if you were asked? And uh, does it actually need to be changed, or should we still be honoring these conference champions and giving them that bye?
Well, you know, uh, Greg Sankey and Tony Petiti came out and said they would like to see the seating change to seeing the teams ranked and seated as they are. And I would 100% agree with that. I think what threw it off, and and I battled that with friends and people who would say, well, the number 3 team lost, in the playoffs. The number 4 team lost in the playoffs. And I'm like, no, number 4 team was ranked 12. Number 3 team was ranked 8. Now 1 and 2 lost because they were the same. But you have these shifts and you have these people these teams that, to me, it makes it unfair when teams are ranked 1 and 2, and because of the way they're seated, that people can come into those positions and back stronger teams up into positions where they're playing you earlier than they normally would. And so I think it puts those teams that bounce out of um the top 4 because other teams come in. I think it puts them at a disadvantage. Because you're playing either tougher teams earlier, or as the number 1 and 2 team did this year, they're playing a higher ranked team earlier in the playoffs than they would have if they would have just seeded them. So in my opinion, you add the 5 conference champions and you leave them ranked where they are unless they're outside. So this year, everybody would have been ranked 1 through 10. Arizona State would have moved from 12 to 11 and Clemson would have moved to 12. And then you set the playoff from there.
Agree.
Any,
It's very simple,
I'm
right? I agree with you, Ward. I think we all do. I think the college football world.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to
exactly.
think of
Makes
all
too
the
much sense.
alphas in that room and
Oh man.
all the investments, experience. Is there a time where it gets heated? Is there a time, or I mean, I just at times I'd visualize what in the heck is going on in that room, because this isn't a game anymore. This is a
No,
business, but it's
it
also
is.
players' lives. It's and then the road to the championship is so, and that was also received some criticism, which I get it. That not necessarily the conference champion had or some of the teams had a much easier road
Mhm.
than another, and it's all part of the draw. I mean,
Yeah,
tell us about the heat. Is there heat? Is there intensity, or
you know,
share what you can share?
yeah, well, Urban, I remember one time before I went on, it must have been the second or third week, I was watching the preview, the show as they were announcing, and the argument that was going on in the studio, between Reese and Joey and Booger and Greg, and they're arguing over why certain things and which team and who should be ranked and those kind of things. And one of the questions came up, and I said, guys, we did this. We did the same thing for, at the time, you take it, we are there 11 to 12 hours. We're sitting in a room arguing over the top 25. And yes, it can get heated. Yes, it does get heated, that people, nobody stands up, nobody pounds, nobody threatens anybody. It's all professionally done. But people, it gets loud at times because people really, every one of the 13 of the committee members care deeply about wanting to get it right. And so they're going to express themselves. I, as the chair, would pull people in if they weren't talking, just to get them to give their thoughts about it. And a lot of the times, people wouldn't talk because it's already been said. So they felt like, well, what I was going to say has already been said, but it's good to pull it out of them. But in this case, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that kind of debate that goes on. And I want the one thing to understand about what happens in that room, Urban, is that it's all the way 1 through 25. There's no let up because we're past 12. Let's just hurry up and get it done. I mean, there's arguments between 21 to 25 in terms of how people rank, because we understand, to your point, it's important to those coaches, It's important, especially to those players. It's important to the institutions, and so we care what happens 1 through 25, and put that effort in all the way through.
Or let's pivot forward out into the future. And I know things are going to change in the coming years. So the Big Ten and the SEC reportedly have put out this concept for a 14 team playoff, and I know you're very aware of it. You know, four automatic bids, if you will, for the SEC and for the Big Ten, two automatics for the ACC and the Big 12, one for the non big boys, if you will, and one that's still kind of lurking out there for Notre Dame should they fill those qualifications. So the 4-4-2-2-1-1 model, why is that the best thing for college football? If it is, in your eyes.
Well, I think, listen, it's all a part of the conversation. It's a conversation about expansion. It's a conversation about a way to potentially structure play-ins into the championship, that it's actually played on the field. There's commentary, for example, that certain people have said that they rather not be playing in the championship game. Well, that to me takes away from the fact that you have championship games. So if in the sense of it, you can come up with a format that actually has people who play into the playoff. Everybody would play into the playoff. That actually adds, to me, value to it, as opposed to some people saying, well, I'll just sit out and I'll be selected. Well, you're leaving that game. That's a game of chance, in terms of what the committee's doing. But I just think it's part of the conversation. It's something that I applaud Greg and Tony for bringing forward and having conversations with us as ads to think about a new way, to think about this playoff. Everybody, and when you look at and compare us to the profession, particularly professional football, there's everybody's playing that last week into a playoff game. And in college, we don't have that. We have championship games, where you have a certain number playing games. In this year, it's 18 out of 132. So if there's a format that allows some way for all teams to be playing in to the playoff, I think that adds value to it.
Is it
My
fair?
last question. My last question,
Real quick,
Ward.
Coach. Let me just hit this
Oh,
because I know where you're going here. Is it fair to the Big 12s? Is it fair to the ACCs? Is it fair to the Mountain Wests of the world?
I don't know. I mean, again, it's a conversation to be had around the playoff itself, and how do you structure it and how do you strengthen it, so that it adds a lot of value to football. Nobody, look, the argument of, and I've read some of it, that this has only been done out of greed. That's not the case. I mean, we feel like we would earn those spots anyway in a particular way. But if it's about changing it so that people are able to enhance the playoff structure and to play in, and to the points that were made earlier, to get rid of this concept of subjectivity. Let's make it objective. Let's put some parameters on it and put a structure around it that has some objectivity, where teams have to play in order to play in, as opposed to certain teams playing their championship games and others get in because of de facto they're ranked at a certain place, and they can't drop far enough to be out of it. I mean, that to me also says there's something when the questions are about so much about subjectivity and what people are talking about in the room. I think you put some objectivity to it, and you put some games as a way to play in. That, I think, makes it, people see it as, instead of just seeing it as, well, you're taking four spots. You're taking four spots, two spots, whatever spots the commissioners decide to do, and you're actually having people play games to play in. That to me is a format that follows what a lot of our leagues and our teams that we have in the way we play get to playoffs.